This is part 2, episode 64. You're here, eldest senior brother. Hui Yuhao hurriedly greeted Bei Bei when he saw his eldest senior brother standing there. Bei Bei said exasperatedly, "My dear little junior brother, you're treating me like the air around you. I've been here for quite some time, and you even answered me when I called you earlier." Hui Yuhao scratched his head in embarrassment. He felt like he would always be the teenager of before in front of his eldest senior brother. The four of them left the Tang sect and proceeded along the streets of Shrek City. Bei Bei and Shusansha were more familiar with the road, thus they led the pack. It was obvious that they spent a lot less time walking, compared to Hui Yuhao when he tried to find his way here on his own. What activity is it, exactly? Hui Yuhao hadn't really thought too much about it at first, but after witnessing He Kaitu's conspicuously unnatural state, his youthful curiosity had been piqued. Shusansha said, "Let me tell you a joke, little junior brother. As there's four of us, it's quite relatable. What's it got to do with tomorrow's activity?" Hui Yuhao asked skeptically. Shusansha replied, "Nothing at all." Bei Bei laughed and said, "Can you not see, little junior brother, that is trying to change the topic and talk about other things? He doesn't want to tell you." Shusansha sincerely said, "It's for your own good. Can't you see that He Kaitu has become stifled and taciturn? I believe that you'll be like him if you know what the activity is about. It's not my fault that the two of you are still virgins. What's this got to do with being virgins?" Hui Yuhao suddenly felt that something was amiss. Bei Bei said seriously, "Don't look down on virgins. I'm also a virgin, ahem. Actually, me too, at least. I'm one in spirit." Shusansha immediately tried to explain himself. Bei Bei muttered contemptuously, "You? Would Nan Nan reject you like she does if you were still a virgin? You still have the shame to laugh at others. I want to see how you pass this hurdle tomorrow." Shusansha was utterly destroyed by Bei Bei's words, and his face immediately turned gloomy and depressed. Hui Yuhao played the Good Samaritan in the end and hurriedly said, "Weren't you about to tell us a joke, second senior brother? Come on and tell us." Shusanshi's personality didn't have many merits, but his skin was really thick. If not, he wouldn't have been able to keep at it with Jiang Nan Nan for so long without giving up. He suddenly became invigorated when he heard Hui Yuhao's question. "This joke, shut it." Bei Bei abruptly interrupted Shusansha and said, "We're about to have dinner. Keep your disgusting joke to yourself, so that you don't affect everyone's appetites. Let me tell you, I'm the host for today. If you antagonize me, I'm going to stir things up even if you can pass that hurdle with Nan Nan." Bei Bei, are you even human? Bei Bei leisurely continued, "We have to treat other humans like humans, but it's hard to say for those things crawling on the ground." "Who are you referring to by things crawling on the ground?" Shusansha infuriatingly replied. Bei Bei answered, "Some tortoise, of course. I wasn't talking about you. There are people who pick up money from the ground, but I never thought there'd be people who insulted themselves, that's it." Shusansha was about to lunge at Bei Bei. Bei Bei didn't seem to care, as he muttered to himself, "I think that some people don't even need to think about tomorrow's sea god's fate at the sea god's lake anymore." Shusansha stopped in his tracks resentfully. "Forget it. I'm a magnanimous and accommodating person, so I won't fuss with you. But seriously, you have to help me tomorrow. If I fail one more time, I'll lose all my confidence." Bei Bei chuckled and replied, "That's tomorrow's activity. You'll have to work hard, little junior brother." Hui Yuhao pulled a long face and said, "You still haven't told me what the activity is about, eldest senior brother. How can I work hard?" Shusansha chimed in, "Two words are enough to describe it. Blind date, blind date." Hui Yuhao's eyes widened. "What blind date?" Shusansha replied, "You don't understand. It means finding a girl for yourself. Do you understand now?" Hui Yuhao's expression creased into a frown as he said, "How could the academy host an activity like that? Furthermore, it's even hosted in our inner courtyard." Hui Yuhao had never expected the activity that Bei Bei was talking about to be a blind date, thus his heart unwittingly began to beat faster. Will that Wang Chua be attending this blind date too? He was experienced in terms of battle, but he was like a blank piece of paper when it came to relationships. He actually became exactly what that Shusansha had described earlier, as he descended into silence and began to blush. Shusansha walked up next to Hui Yuhao and wrapped his arm around Hui Yuhao's shoulder. Don't worry, Yuhao, it's easy to get girls. I'll teach you 3 moves: be courageous, be meticulous, and be thick-skinned. We're all adults at this point, and the academy has given us permission. If you see someone that you like, just go ahead and chase her. Remember that we aren't inferior to anyone, and good luck. Yes, Hui Yuhao nodded, but the goddess of light's image echoed in his mind. The first person that popped into his mind when he thought about girls was the woman of his dreams, and occasionally the feeling of awe he'd felt when he saw Wang Chua's elegance and gracefulness. When will Wang Dong be back? Eldest senior brother. Hui Yuhao asked Bei Bei. It'd be nice if Wang Dong was around. Wang Chua should be his twin sister, thus he should be able to give me some pointers. Bei Bei exchanged a look with Shusansha and then said, he should be back in time to participate in the event, as it'll be hosted tomorrow night. Eldest senior sister, and I will be hosting the hosts of the Sea God's Fate, thus we'll explain the rules to you tomorrow during the day. This event belongs to the inner courtyard students, and is a good chance for everyone to interact with one another. The teachers will make guest appearances and watch from the side, but they will not interfere. You don't have to worry, little junior brother, because we have prepared for bashful people like you and Kai too, and I guarantee that you will be eased into the event when the time comes. Furthermore, you have to remember that being together with the person you like isn't that easy, as there are far fewer girls in the inner courtyard than guys. There will be a contest of abilities when the time comes, so you have to be mentally prepared for that. We still have to fight during the blind date. Hui Yuhao exchanged a look with He Kai too. There was a tinge of eagerness in all his anxiety, but he also felt a little distressed and awkward. Eldest senior brother, can I choose not to participate in this event? Hui Yuhao asked feebly. Bei Bei replied firmly, no way. You're part of the Sea God's Pavilion, and you're part of Shrek's 7 monsters. You will ruin our reputation if you don't participate. Furthermore, you won't have this fantastic opportunity whenever you want it. Even though it's hosted every year, if you don't make a move on the girl you like, then perhaps she'll become someone else's girl the following year. You can't let this opportunity go, as it may never come back to you. Hui Yuhao watched Bei Bei's sincere and honest expression, but Hui Yuhao felt as if there were butterflies in his stomach. He started to hope for Wang Dong's return in his mind again. Wang Dong was much more experienced than he was with things like this. They departed Shrek City, and it didn't take long before they returned to Shrek Academy. Sea God's Island hadn't changed much. Even before he stepped on the island, Hui Yuhao could feel that there were quite a few people in boats hustling about on the lake. Bei Bei told him that they were making preparations for tomorrow's Sea God's Fate. Let's grab a bite to eat. I'm famished. Shusansha patted his stomach and strode towards the canteen the moment he stepped on the island. Hui Yuhao was astonished when they arrived at the canteen. The Sea God's Pavilion's canteen was bustling. He could see about 30 students eating when he surveyed the place, and the food seemed a lot more sumptuous than before. What made him even more surprised was that there were 2 barrels of red wine by the side, which students could drink if they wanted to. What's this, eldest senior brother? The academy allows alcohol now. Hui Yuhao asked in shock. Bei Bei answered, the Sea God's Fate will be hosted tomorrow, and tonight is called Singles Night. Have you realized that the people eating are all guys, and there isn't a single girl? Everybody has been frustrated and nervous during their day-to-day cultivation, and most of the students in the inner courtyard are already adults. Having a little wine is nothing, and this is expressly permitted by the academy so that everyone can relax a little. It isn't allowed on typical days. Come, let's have a drink. This was the first time Hui Yuhao had ever tasted wine. He savored the delicious food prepared by the academy's top-tier chefs, and sipped on dark red wine the color of a rose. He gazed into the night above the Sea God's Lake in the distance, and he suddenly felt a little surreal. The wine tasted a little sour when it entered his mouth, and it smelled like ripe apricots. He didn't feel much when he had the first mouthful, but the crisp fragrance of the wooden barrel and the wine's various aromas came back as an aftertaste, and Hui Yuhao instantly felt his face starting to heat up. He had never been tipsy before in his entire life, and he felt as if his entire body had been submerged in the savory wine. Hui Yuhao. A deep and slightly unfamiliar voice rang out from behind him. Hu Yuhao turned around and stared at the person who had called out his name. His eyes were relaxed and a little dazed before this, but they instantly became as sharp as could be. This person was a tall young man, slightly taller than Hu Yuhao, with broad shoulders and a wide back. His short golden hair was especially neat and clean, but his face seemed a little gloomy and overcast, and he was staring at Hu Yuhao with cold eyes. He was also holding a cup of wine in his hand, and his pupils sparkled with a chilly light. Dai Huabin. Hu Yuhao called out the other person's name calmly. They hadn't seen each other for more than 2 years, but the hatred in Hu Yuhao's heart had never disappeared, not even for a single moment. He had gotten better at hiding this hatred at the bottom of his heart. At least, now wasn't the time to take his revenge. Dai Huabin walked up beside Hu Yuhao and looked towards the vast mist-covered sea god's lake. He sipped his wine and his eyes narrowed as he asked, "When did you return?" Hu Yuhao drank his wine in similar fashion and replied, "I came back a few days ago." Dai Huabin asked, "Are you participating in tomorrow's sea god's fate?" Hu Yuhao answered, "Yes." Dai Huabin said, "I didn't want to participate at first, as Zhulu hasn't entered the inner courtyard yet. However, since you're going to participate, I'll participate as well. Shall we make a bet?" "Nope." Hu Yuhao's answer was clean and decisive, "You're afraid." Dai Huabin raised an eyebrow, and the glow in his eyes became stronger than before. Hu Yuhao turned towards him, and his eyes were still as limpid as before. "No, then why don't you want to bet with me?" Dai Huabin's tone was overbearing and menacing. Hu Yuhao smiled and replied, "Because you're not worthy." He was smiling, but the chill in his eyes was filled with provocation. Dai Huabin was silent, and his cheeks tensed up. The cup of wine in his hands remained unnaturally stable, however. Hu Yuhao thought he was going to attack, but Dai Huabin regained his composure and muttered coldly, "We'll see if I'm worthy enough at the sea god's fate tomorrow." With that, he turned around and strode away. Hu Yuhao was a little surprised as he watched Dai Huabin walk away. His words were meant to infuriate Dai Huabin. The hatred and vengeance between the two of them was irreconcilable, but this was Shrek Academy, after all, and Hu Yuhao couldn't just murder him here even if he had the ability to do so. Therefore, he had to trick Dai Huabin into making a mistake, and when Dai Huabin did something outrageous, when he was angry, well, the outcome would be hard to say. However, Dai Huabin displayed his calm and composed side, and he wasn't as impulsive as he was back then. He actually restrained himself even when Hu Yuhao tried to provoke him. He turned and left just like that, something that would have been unimaginable for Hu Yuhao if they were in the past. He's grown up too, Hu Yuhao thought to himself. He stared at Dai Huabin, and couldn't help but think about Dai Yueheng, who he had fought alongside by side before. Dai Yueheng had already left the academy, and he was probably fighting on the battlefield with the White Tiger Duke. In terms of blood relations, they were both Hu Yuhao's older brothers. Brothers, what a strange thing to call them. Hu Yuhao laughed at himself. Shu Sancha came beside Hu Yuhao, and he drained the wine in his cup as he asked, "What did that Dai Huabin fellow want with you?" Hu Yuhao explained, "He says we shall meet at the sea god's fate tomorrow." Shu Sancha said, "Seems like he wants to stir up trouble for you." Hu Yuhao, you can't be complacent. Dai Huabin has improved rapidly over the past 2 years. Hu Yuhao glanced at Shu Sancha, surprised. He knew that his third senior brother had always thought highly of himself, so he didn't expect Shu Sancha to give such a high evaluation of Dai Huabin. Shu Sancha said, "Your batch has many prodigies and talents, indeed. You, Wang Dong, and even Xiao Xiao have entered the inner courtyard, and several students jumped levels to enter the inner courtyard as well, several. Who else besides Dai Huabin?" Hu Yuhao asked curiously. Shu Sancha replied, "There are 3 others. The 7 treasures glazed pagoda's auxiliary type Soul Master Ning Tian, the Red Dragon Assault type Soul Master Wu Feng, and the Rubadon defense type Soul Master Xia Huanyue." "Yeah, isn't that him over there?" Hu Yuhao followed Shu Sanchi's eyes, and saw Xia Huanyue. Xia Huanyue was much taller compared to a few years ago, but his body seemed to have grown even pudgier, while his looks were quite different as well. After all, everyone had gone through puberty. Dai Huabin walked up next to him and said something to him, and Xia Huanyue's eyes coincidentally turned towards Hu Yuhao. Their eyes met, and Hu Yuhao raised the wine glass in his hands as a gesture. He didn't have any vengeance or hatred with Xia Huanyue, after all. Xia Huanyue responded with a nod. Shu Sancha said, "Did you expect the few of them to be able to join the inner courtyard?" Hu Yuhao asked, They must have broken through rank 50. Shusansha nodded and replied, they can be described as extraordinary prodigies even within Shrek Academy, just like you and Wang Dong. Even though they don't have twin martial souls, their martial souls are exceptionally powerful. This is especially so for Dai Huabin, and his performance in the past few years has been rather dazzling and stunning. His soul power should have exceeded rank 50 by now. You have to realize that he's been studying in the outer courtyard this whole time, and that he doesn't have the advantage of twin martial souls like Wang Dong does. At his current rate of progression, he'll definitely breach rank 60 within the next 2 years. Among Shrek's 7 monsters, even Nan Nan and Xiao Xiao might not be as fast as him. Hui Yuhao smiled and said, I'm slower too. Shusansha quickly snapped back, you're a freak, how could you be the same as the others? You shouldn't talk about yourself like that. Even though I don't think that Dai Huabin is stronger than you, his potential and talent are possibly superior to senior Dai Yueheng's. You should watch out in case he tries to stir up trouble with you tomorrow, as it's related to a major turning point in your life. Hui Yuhao laughed and said, third senior brother, you sound like you're trying to say that I'll definitely find the person that I like tomorrow. Shusansha laughed along with him and said, you'll find her as long as you're not a stupid fool. Even though Hui Yuhao was feeling a little distressed again, he could still clearly feel Shusanshi's concern. Come, let's have a few more drinks. It's rare for the academy to give us wine, and pretty good wine at that. This brew is probably at least 10 years old, and has been oxidized beforehand. These 2 barrels are quite expensive. Look at Bei Bei, that useless fella. Bei Bei was currently chatting with Hikaitu on the other side. They were both sitting right next to a barrel of wine as if they were guarding it, and Bei Bei was downing wine very quickly. He'd finish his glass in 2 or 3 mouthfuls before refilling it and continuing. Hikaitu was quite large, but even he wasn't drinking as fast as Bei Bei. Shusanshi's frowned slightly and said, Bei Bei has been quite depressed these past 2 years. Hui Yuhao nodded his head slightly. Of course he knew what Shusansha was trying to say. Shusansha heaved a sigh and said, it's so difficult to find a single person in this wide, vast world of ours. Even though we all know that something has probably happened to Xiao Yue, he refuses to believe it. I've already seen him drinking by himself late into the night several times. He looks tough on the surface, but his heart is actually extremely fragile. Xiao Yue is just too important to him. Hui Yuhao gradually clenched his fists. He lowered his voice and said, Teacher Xiao Yue will be all right. Shusansha nodded and said, we'll all pray for her. They walked up to Bei Bei and Hikaitu after they'd finished speaking. Bei Bei's eyes were already covered with layer of haziness, and he smiled when he saw Hui Yuhao. He patted Hui Yuhao lightly on the shoulder and then finished the cup of wine he was holding with a single gulp. Yuhao, you have to remember my words. Treasure the people around you. You will only truly feel the impact of their loss in your bones when you've actually lost them. I won't drink anymore. I don't want you to see my fragile side. I'm leaving. He waved to the 3 of them once he'd finished and then turned to walk away, staggering from side to side as he did so. Hui Yuhao wanted to chase after him, but Shusansha held him back and said, don't. Nothing that we say to him will be as good as letting him have some alone time. All that we can say has been said. He doesn't want to get drunk and collapse before us, which means that he's trying to protect his last ounce of dignity. Shusansha had known Bei Bei longer than everyone else present, thus he was undoubtedly the one that understood him best. Hui Yuhao turned back around. He truly didn't wish to see his eldest senior brother like this. As the circles around his eyes began to turn red, he thought, is this love? If the girl that I like were to suddenly leave my side one day, would I become like him? Bei Bei's loneliness affected everyone's mood in the end, and the singles night ended like that. Hui Yuhao didn't stay with his senior brothers, as his dorm on Sea God's Island had been assigned to someone else. As such, he could only stay in the Sea God's Pavilion for now. He sauntered towards the Sea God's Pavilion. However, when he saw the towering golden tree, tears began to involuntarily trickle down his cheeks. He wasn't just feeling sad for Bei Bei. Coming back here made him think about Elder Mu, who'd passed away. He knelt on the ground in the direction of the Sea God's Pavilion, and kowtowed towards the tall ancient tree 3 times in a row. I'm home, teacher. I miss you so much. Hui Yuhao didn't even manage to finish his sentence before beginning to sob uncontrollably. This place was his real home, only here could he feel completely relaxed. 2.5 years had gone by, and he'd finally been able to see the Sea God's Island once more. He was finally able to see the Sea God's Pavilion and Golden Tree again. Hu Yuhao cried for a good 15 minutes, as if he was releasing all the pent-up emotions that he'd accumulated over the past 2.5 years. Elder Mu was gone, Electrolux's divine sense had dissipated into nothingness, teacher Xiao Yue was missing, and Ma Xiaodao had vanished. These were all people he was extremely close to. He had been extraordinarily tough on himself back in the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy. He'd rarely slept properly, most nights had been spent drawing blueprints or cultivating. More than 2 years had gone by since he left. Hu Yuhao had grown up, and was now much more mature. But no matter what, he was still only 17 years old. Most people at his age were still in their adolescence, and their mentalities were still immature such that they still had to rely on their parents. And yet, Hu Yuhao had been carrying so much more on his shoulders all by himself. Elder Xian quietly stood a ways away from Hu Yuhao, raising the wine bottle in his hands from time to take a sip. However, he didn't step forward to console Hu Yuhao, as an emotional catharsis such as this wasn't exactly a bad thing for him. Instead, this was a chance for Hu Yuhao to finally release his pent-up emotions. Elder Mu, you took in 2 exceptional disciples during your final years. Reeb novel.om. Elder Xian's eyes were full of gratification. In the Sea God's pavilion not far from him, a pair of clear yet icy blue eyes were staring at Hu Yuhao, who was still bawling on the ground. This person wanted to dash out and comfort Hu Yuhao, but the 2 people beside this person held them back. Do you want to waste all of your past efforts? Control yourself. Crying isn't a bad thing for him. Men shed tears too, but they don't come easily. I think that there's too much pressure on his shoulders, but he's in so much pain, and his cries are so sorrowful. I stop looking. Your tears are coming out too. Everything will be all right tomorrow. Look, Elder Xian is here. He'll be fine. He's a powerful Soul King after all. Will crying really do him any harm? Hu Yuhao cried until even he felt a bit dizzy and disoriented. He didn't know when he returned to the Sea God's pavilion, and couldn't remember how he'd entered his room. He simply collapsed onto his bed and fell asleep the moment that he entered the room. Pale golden rays cascaded in through the walls of Hu Yuhao's room. They became specks of golden light that descended onto his body. It was as if they were warmly and gently caressing and comforting him. Hu Yuhao was still in dreamland, but he began to feel warm. His tightly knit eyebrows gradually relaxed, and he began to sleep even more soundly. When he woke up from his deep sleep, his entire body felt languid and relaxed, and he felt an unspeakable amount of comfort and contentment. His fatigue had completely disappeared, which was in stark contrast to his lethargic sleep back at the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy. I'm home. He lay back down on the bed and closed his eyes. The corner of his mouth curled into a faint smile. The feeling of being home was just too good. He hugged his blanket that was filled with the smell of sunlight and turned on his side, seeming to feel even more comfortable. Sunlight was already flooding into the room, but he didn't want to get up at all. He continued to doze. By the time he woke up, he felt a wave of freshness and coolness. There was just one thing that didn't feel comfortable, his stomach. Why am I so hungry? He quickly sat up on the bed, and then rubbed his sleepy eyes and dragged himself to the window to check the sky outside. Just this one look gave him a shock. The sun is leaning towards the west. Midday has already passed. Did I really sleep that long? The first thought that came to mind was that he hadn't even cultivated his purple demon eyes. However, it didn't seem like there was much to do today anyway. I've finally returned home. I should just rest for a day. He was in exceptional spirits after a good night's sleep, and left the room after changing his clothes. The Sea God's pavilion never lacked food. Hu Yuhao quickly found some fruit and other light refreshments before he proceeded towards the Sea God's Island's dormitory area. He wanted to find his senior brothers and find out what today's arrangement were. Right, there's that Sea God's fate thing tonight. Hu Yuhao slapped himself on the forehead. He'd slept so long that his mind had become a little blurry, and had nearly forgotten about it. I'm sure eldest senior brother will tell me the rules now. When he arrived at Beibei's dorm room, both Shusansha and Hikai too were already there. This video will end here. Thank you for watching.